But when I look at the Carolina Panthers and I think of Matt Rule as the head coach, to me I think of the final crisis story, the spirit of dark side tumbling through time and then manifesting itself inside a human body. And the fall of this team, I see Matt Rule. And the person I know that truly gets that reference is our man Konata Edwards from CBS Sports, formerly a host of the Locked On Panthers podcast. Konata, am I wrong in thinking that Matt Rule might be the human body embodiment of dark side, and this is the final crisis for the Carolina Panthers and this team as we currently know it?
First things first, how dare you use probably one of the worst crossovers ever.
Exactly.
How dare you do that?
Okay.
Second thing was, I as much as I don't like Matt Rule, comparing him to Darkseid is going a little bit far.
Okay.
Just
all right. That's fair. But okay, I make one of the worst crossovers is Final Crisis. But that again, my point is this is also probably one of the worst times we've seen the Carolina Panthers over the last couple of years. I haven't seen any improvement from this team since Matt Rule's taken over. But I don't know. Maybe this is the year. Maybe Mr. Miracle finally shows up. I don't know. Konata, you tell me.
I don't know if Mr. Miracle shows up, but what I would tell you is that this team is probably going to be functionally better because the offensive line is going to be better.
Okay.
This team is going to be better because the quarterback play has to be better. I would also tell you that this team will probably surprise. Now, again, I'm not expecting them to win. They should win tomorrow. I'm not expecting them to win like 9, 10, 11 games. But if they win a solid 7 or 8, I could see them being in that mix for that last playoff spot. I mean, the Chicago Bears, a couple of years back when they bombed out and depleted, they made it. So I'm not saying that it's also like impossible to not necessarily make some impact. So I wouldn't call it final crisis, but I wouldn't have the most hope in this team anyway.
Konata Edwards, nice to meet you, man. I'm Chris Lee. That's our first time getting a chance to chat, but I'm sure if you've known Dennis for a time, you know that he is anti-everything.
I'm not anti-everything.
A pessimist.
I just told you earlier I am for the fall season, and you shot that down, so don't give me all pessimist.
That's because the leaves are dying,
and they're beautiful,
and you are comfortable with death. So anyway, let's talk about this. I will say this. I'm not a Matt Rule apologist, right? But I will say that he took over during an already downtime for the Carolina Panthers, and then it was a COVID year. And then you don't get a chance to really build the players the way that coaches were able to really build the players. Then you have other things that kind of happen. I don't know if it was really David Tepper who got in the way of the whole Teddy Bridgewater thing, but not having consistency at quarterback definitely hurts your team, right? Whether that's Matt Rule's fault, David Tepper's fault, whoever's fault that is. But I will say this though. They have a pretty good roster. Like if you look at the roster and this year, they're a little bit deeper at different positions than what they have been before. What do you feel like is going to be outside of the offensive line? What do you think is probably the most improved positional group that you think is coming in for this year that we may see like a step up in play for the Carolina Panthers?
Cornerback is easily, because you're talking about J.C. Horn, top 10 pick. You're talking about Dante Jackson, who had an amazing season last year. And you're talking about Chris Henderson. And those three guys could make this incredibly interesting in terms of, okay, the pass rush isn't necessarily going to be there with the loss of Hassan Reddick. You're also talking about a lot of other situations, like linebacker Shaq Thompson's going to be hurt. But the shining star of this roster is probably going to be its secondary. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a legitimate Pro Bowler, someone voted there. I mean, that squad looks like it's going to be fun. It's going to be one of the most interesting portions of the Carolina Panthers. And it's something to look forward to, because if this squad basically can cover for 4 or 5 seconds, you might see a Brian Burns 10, 12, maybe even 15 sack season. It's not going to be this miserable portion. And something you brought up, Chris, that was very interesting. And I absolutely agree. I think when we start talking about why this team isn't the way it is, or isn't the way it's supposed to be right now, I would probably suggest that ownership's got a lot to do with this. Everything that comes to, like, everything, whether a team is good or bad, comes down to ownership and how much they want to get in the way or not get in the way. We see Tom Dundon. Occasionally he gets in the way, but for the most part, the Carolina Hurricanes are very, very successful right now. And that's because you have, again, they put the people in place to where you can do things. They let the hockey people get in the way. They don't let the hockey people basically do what they need to do. And we don't necessarily see that with David Tepper right now.
Konata Edwards, CBS Sports, is joining us here in the Heister Automotive Group hotline here on Culture State Saturdays. You might bring up a great point, and Chris brought this up too, again, about ownership. I think, honestly, that's my biggest concern about this franchise right now is ownership, because we see Tepper come from Pittsburgh, who's known for being patient, whether it's with head coaches, players.
And he hasn't been patient at all.
He hasn't been patient at all. I mean, the guy doesn't even let a facility get finished. To me, is that going to be the biggest concern for this franchise moving forward? Not just the guys on the field or the coach on the sideline. It's the guy in the front office.
Absolutely. It's going to be the guy. It's the owner. The owner is probably the biggest bellwether sign that whether your team is going to win or not. If your owner is patient, he's probably going to end up winning. If your owner is going to let the football people do the football things, you're probably going to end up with a winner sooner rather than later and a long period of sustained success. But when you have a owner that wants to be all up in the video, that wants to have
he called him P. Diddy out here.
Oh, he did. And then, so see, David Tepper is now tampering. David Tepper's not tampering because we just lost Konata Edwards. So he's already tampering. He's listening in, Chris.
Yeah.
David Tepper's listening in. This is what happens when you're an affiliate of a pro sports team. They start listening in.